On a frozen morning in January 2008, in the small Wisconsin town of Merrill, a young woman named Jennifer Harris stepped out of her apartment to warm up her car before work. The temperature hovered at 12 degrees below zero. Steam rose from her breath in thick clouds. She wore a navy blue parka, black mittens, and carried her work badge clipped to her belt. Her shift at the paper mill started at 7 o'clock. She never arrived. By noon that day, her silver Honda Accord sat idling in the parking lot, driver's door open, keys still in the ignition, her coffee cup steaming on the dashboard. Jennifer Harris had vanished. What happened in those missing hours would remain hidden for nearly 6 years, buried beneath layers of deception, protected by silence, concealed by someone the community never suspected. The question that haunted Merrill was simple and terrible. Where was Jennifer Harris? Merrill sits in Lincoln County in north-central Wisconsin, population just under 9,000 souls. The Wisconsin River curves through town like a slow heartbeat. Pine forests press in from all directions. In winter, the landscape becomes a study in white and gray, the kind of place where pickup trucks outnumber sedans, where everyone knows the cashier at the grocery store by name, where a missing person is not just a statistic but a neighbor, a daughter, someone's friend from high school. Jennifer Lynn Harris was 26 years old that January. She had grown up in Merrill, graduated from Merrill High School in 2000, and worked as a quality control inspector at the Wausau paper mill on the east side of town. She lived alone in a modest one-bedroom apartment on East 3rd Street, a brown-sided building with 6 units, a shared laundry room in the basement, and a parking lot that was never quite plowed thoroughly enough. Those who knew her described Jennifer as reliable, quiet, someone who kept to herself but was unfailingly polite. She had strawberry blonde hair that she wore pulled back in a ponytail, pale blue eyes, and a habit of biting her lower lip when concentrating. She called her mother every Sunday evening. She paid her rent on time. She had worked at the mill for 3 years without a single absence. January 15th, 2008 was a Tuesday. The day before, temperatures had climbed to a relatively mild 22 degrees, melting some of the snow packed along the curbs. But overnight, a cold front had swept down from Canada, dropping the mercury to dangerous lows. Weather reports warned residents to limit time outdoors. The wind chill made it feel like 30 below. Jennifer's alarm went off at 5:30 that morning. Her upstairs neighbor, a retired schoolteacher named Margaret Kowalski, later told investigators she heard the alarm through the thin ceiling, heard it shut off after 2 rings, heard the familiar sounds of Jennifer moving through her morning routine. Water running in the bathroom, the coffee maker gurgling, the television clicking on to the local news. Everything normal, everything routine. At 6:15, Margaret heard Jennifer's apartment door close. She heard footsteps descending the exterior stairs. Through her window, she watched Jennifer walk across the parking lot toward her Honda, breath visible in the glow of the security light mounted above the building's entrance. Jennifer got into her car, started the engine, then got back out to let it warm up. This was normal. Everyone did this in weather like this. The car would need at least 10 minutes before the defroster could clear the windshield. Margaret watched Jennifer walk back toward the building. Then Margaret went to pour herself a second cup of coffee. She did not look out the window again. At 7:05, Jennifer's supervisor at the mill, Thomas Brennan, noticed her workstation remained empty. He checked the schedule. Jennifer was definitely on the morning shift. He waited 15 minutes, then called her cell phone. It rang 4 times and went to voicemail. He left a message asking if everything was okay. At 7:30, he called again. Same result. By 8 o'clock, Thomas felt the first flutter of genuine concern. Jennifer had never missed a shift without calling. He phoned the main office and asked if anyone had heard from her. They had not. At 8:45, a Merrill police officer named David Chen, responding to what was initially logged as a welfare check, arrived at Jennifer's apartment building. He knocked on her door. No answer. He tried the knob. Locked. He spoke with Margaret Kowalski, who told him about seeing Jennifer that morning. They walked down to the parking lot together. Jennifer's silver Honda Accord sat in her assigned spot, engine running, driver's door hanging open. Snow had blown into the front seat, creating a small drift on the floor mat. The coffee Jennifer had made that morning still sat in the cup holder, no longer steaming but not yet frozen solid. Officer Chen placed his hand on the hood. The metal was warm. The gas gauge showed 3/4 full. Nothing appeared damaged or disturbed. No signs of struggle. No blood. No broken glass. The car had simply been left running, door open, as if Jennifer had stepped away for just a moment and planned to return immediately. But she had not returned. Officer Chen radioed for assistance. Within the hour, the parking lot filled with squad cars. Investigators photographed the vehicle from every angle. They dusted for fingerprints. They searched the interior. Jennifer's purse sat on the passenger seat, wallet inside containing her driver's license and $43 in cash. Her cell phone lay on the dashboard. The last call received was from her supervisor at 7:05. The last call made had been Sunday evening to her mother in Wausau, a conversation that lasted 12 minutes. Search teams formed immediately. Volunteers spread through the neighborhood, knocking on doors, asking questions. Had anyone seen Jennifer? Had anyone heard anything unusual? Most residents had been inside, sheltered from the brutal cold. A few remembered seeing the Honda's headlights on early that morning. No one reported seeing Jennifer herself after approximately 6:20. Police canvassed local hospitals, called area clinics, checked with friends and coworkers. No one had heard from her. Her mother, Patricia Harris, drove up from Wausau in a state of rising panic, arriving around noon. She walked through Jennifer's apartment with investigators looking for anything out of place. The apartment was tidy, dishes washed and put away, bed made, a load of laundry folded on the couch. On the kitchen counter, a note in Jennifer's handwriting reminded her to pick up dry cleaning on Wednesday. Everything suggested she had planned to return. Clear's throat. The temperature that afternoon never rose above 0. Search teams walked the banks of the Wisconsin River. They checked the woods behind the apartment complex. They interviewed every resident in the building, every business owner on the block. A pattern emerged in these conversations, a detail that investigators noted but could not yet interpret. Several people mentioned seeing a dark blue Ford pickup truck in the parking lot that morning. It had been there around 6:30, idling near the entrance. One witness, a deliveryman named Robert Sanchez, remembered it specifically because he had needed to maneuver his van around it. He described the truck as a late model F-150, Wisconsin plates, no distinguishing marks. He had not seen the driver. By nightfall on January 15th, Jennifer Harris had been missing for approximately 12 hours. The Lincoln County Sheriff's Department upgraded the case from a welfare check to a missing person investigation. They issued a press release. Local news stations ran Jennifer's photograph during their evening broadcasts. The image showed her at a family gathering the previous summer, smiling slightly, looking directly at the camera. The description was simple. White female, 26 years old, 5 feet 4 inches, approximately 120 pounds, strawberry blonde hair, blue eyes, last seen wearing a navy blue parka and black jeans. Tips began coming in. Someone thought they saw her at a gas station in Tomahawk. Another caller reported a woman matching her description at a rest stop near Wausau. Investigators followed each lead. All proved false. As the first week passed, then the second, the search expanded. Divers checked the river despite the ice. Helicopters equipped with thermal imaging flew grid patterns over the surrounding forest. Bloodhounds tracked scents that led nowhere. Jennifer's mother appeared on television, pleading for information. Her voice cracked as she spoke. She described her daughter as responsible, careful, someone who would never simply walk away from her life. The community rallied. A reward fund was established. Posters appeared in shop windows throughout Merrill. But as January turned to February, as the initial urgency faded into grim routine, investigators faced a frustrating reality. They had no body, no witnesses to an actual incident, no clear evidence of what had happened. Just an abandoned car and a woman who had disappeared between her apartment and her workplace on a morning so cold that few people had been outside to see anything at all. The investigation slowed. Leads dried up. The case went cold. Part 2. The investigation. The Lincoln County Sheriff's Department assigned Detective Sarah Lindstrom as lead investigator on the Jennifer Harris case. Lindstrom was 42 years old, a 20-year veteran of law enforcement, known for her methodical approach and her refusal to close cases prematurely. She began by constructing a timeline, accounting for every minute of Jennifer's last known day. 5:30, alarm sounds. 5:32, alarm silenced. 5:35 to 6:10, morning routine. 6:15, exits apartment. 6:16 to 6:20, starts car, returns to building. 6:20 to unknown, disappears. The window of opportunity was small. Somewhere between 6:20, when Margaret Kowalski last saw Jennifer walking back toward the building, and 6:45, when another resident left for work and noticed the Honda still running with its door open, Jennifer had vanished. 25 minutes, in weather that made being outdoors dangerous, in a parking lot visible from multiple apartment windows. Detective Lindstrom interviewed neighbors again, pressing for details. Had anyone heard a scream, a struggle, an engine? Nothing. The cold had driven everyone inside, windows closed tight against the wind. The television sets had been on. The furnaces had been running. The world outside had been silent and empty. She turned her attention to Jennifer's personal life. The young woman had no boyfriend, no recent breakup, no known conflicts. She had a small circle of friends from high school, most of whom had moved away. Her social media presence was minimal. Her bank account showed regular deposits from the mill, modest withdrawals for rent and groceries. No large, unexplained transactions. No evidence of financial trouble or debts. Jennifer lived simply, worked steadily, and by all accounts kept to herself. Clears throat. But during these interviews, a name kept surfacing. Not as a suspect initially, but as someone who had known Jennifer, someone who had been around that morning, someone who might have seen something. His name was Marcus Webb. Marcus Webb was 31 years old. He worked as a maintenance supervisor at the same apartment complex where Jennifer lived. He was married with 2 young children, a boy aged 7 and a girl aged 4. Those who knew him described Marcus as helpful, friendly, always willing to fix a leaky faucet or shovel a walkway. He had lived in Merrill his whole life. His wife, Rachel, worked part-time at the public library. They lived in a house on North Pine Street, a 15-minute drive from the apartment complex. Detective Lindstrom interviewed Marcus on January 18th, 3 days after Jennifer disappeared. He came to the sheriff's department voluntarily, arriving at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. He wore work boots and a flannel shirt. He sat across from Lindstrom in the interview room, hands folded on the table, answering questions in a calm, steady voice. He had been at the apartment complex that morning, he confirmed. He had arrived around 6 o'clock to salt the walkways before residents left for work. The property management company required this in winter weather. He had been there approximately 45 minutes. Yes, he had seen Jennifer's car. He thought he had seen her briefly, walking toward the building, but he had been focused on his work. The cold made everything difficult. He had finished salting, then gone to another property he maintained on the south side of town. "Did you see anyone else in the parking lot?" Lindstrom asked. "No, ma'am," Marcus said. "Just Jennifer's car running. I figured she was warming it up." "Did you see any other vehicles?" He paused, appearing to think. "There might have been a truck, dark-colored. I didn't pay much attention." "What time did you leave the property?" "Around 6:45, maybe 6:50. Lindstrom made notes. The timeline fit. Marcus's presence at the scene was explained by his job. Nothing about his demeanor suggested deception. He maintained eye contact. His hands remained still. He expressed appropriate concern for Jennifer's well-being. The interview lasted 35 minutes. Lindstrom thanked him for his cooperation. But something nagged at her, a small detail. When describing the morning, Marcus had mentioned the cold multiple times, had described how quickly his fingers went numb, how the salt stung when the wind blew it back in his face. Yet when asked if he had seen Jennifer, he said he thought he had seen her briefly. Thought, not certain. For someone who had been so aware of the conditions, who had described the morning in such vivid detail, this vagueness seemed odd. She checked his story. The property management company confirmed he had been scheduled to salt walkways that morning. Residents at the other property he maintained remembered seeing him arrive around 7:15. The timeline worked. Everything checked out. Still, Lindstrom requested permission to examine Marcus's truck. He agreed without hesitation. Investigators found nothing unusual. The truck was clean, well-maintained. They swabbed for DNA, checked for blood, examined the bed for any signs of having transported anything. Results came back negative. Weeks passed. The investigation continued. Lindstrom obtained Jennifer's phone records, her email accounts, her social media messages. Nothing pointed to Marcus Webb or to anyone else. The case was stuck. In early March, Lindstrom returned to the apartment complex. She walked the parking lot trying to reconstruct what might have happened. She noticed something. From where Marcus said he had been salting the walkway, he would have had a clear view of Jennifer's car. More than a clear view. He would have been standing less than 30 feet away. On a morning when visibility was good despite the cold, when the security lights illuminated the entire lot, how could he only think he had seen her? She interviewed him again. March 12th. This time she asked more specific questions about his movements that morning. Marcus remained calm, cooperative. He had arrived at 6, started with the sidewalk near the entrance, worked his way around the building. The salt was kept in a storage shed behind the property. He had made 3 trips to refill his bucket. "So you were moving around the entire complex?" "Yes, ma'am." "And you're certain about the time you left?" "Pretty certain, maybe a few minutes either way." His cell phone records showed he had received a call from his wife at 6:38 that morning. The call lasted 2 minutes. When asked about it, Marcus explained she had called to remind him to pick up milk on the way home. A mundane detail, a normal morning conversation. But Lindstrom noticed something else in the phone records. Marcus's phone had pinged off the tower nearest the apartment complex from 6:03 until 7:12, not 6:45 or 6:50 as he had stated. He had been at the property for over an hour. When confronted with this discrepancy, Marcus frowned, reconsidered. "I guess I was there longer than I thought," he said. "I must have lost track of time in the cold." Possible, perhaps even probable. Cold distorts perception. Tasks take longer. But the discrepancy had been significant, not 5 minutes, not 10, 27 minutes. Deputies whispered quietly among themselves. Something felt wrong, not provable, not even clearly articulable. Just a feeling that the maintenance man who had been so helpful, so cooperative, was not being entirely truthful about something. Lindstrom ran a background check. Marcus Webb had no criminal record, not even a speeding ticket. He paid his taxes. He coached his son's little league team. His wife spoke of him with genuine affection during a casual interview at the library. He seemed, by every measure, exactly who he appeared to be. The investigation dragged on through spring. Jennifer's mother called the sheriff's department weekly, desperate for updates. There were none. Without a body, without witnesses, without any physical evidence, the case stalled. By summer, active searching had stopped. The file remained open, but resources shifted to newer cases, more promising leads. Those who knew Marcus Webb said he seemed unchanged by the investigation. He continued his work. He attended his children's school functions. He and his wife were seen at church on Sundays. Life went on. The case went cold. Part 3: The Silence. 18 months after Jennifer Harris disappeared, her mother sold the apartment where her daughter had lived. The belongings were boxed up, distributed to family, donated to charity. The apartment was rented to new tenants who knew nothing of what had happened there. The silver Honda Accord was released from evidence and sold. The posters in shop windows faded and were taken down. Merrill moved forward, as small towns do, absorbing the tragedy, incorporating it into local history, another unsolved mystery to whisper about. But for some, the silence was louder than any scream. Rachel Webb noticed changes in her husband that she could not quite name. Small things. Marcus had always been a sound sleeper, someone who could lie down and be unconscious within minutes. But now she woke sometimes in the night to find his side of the bed empty, found him downstairs watching television, staring at the screen without really seeing it. When she asked if he was all right, he said he was fine, just restless, trouble sleeping. It happens. He became more particular about his truck. He had always kept it clean, but now he washed it weekly, sometimes twice a week. He detailed the interior, vacuumed the floor mats, wiped down the dashboard. When Rachel teased him about it, asking if he planned to sell it, he smiled tightly and said he just liked things neat. Their son, Tyler, began having nightmares. He would wake screaming, crying about monsters, about being lost, about not being able to breathe. The pediatrician said this was normal for children his age. Night terrors. He would outgrow them. But Rachel noticed the nightmares seemed worse on nights when Marcus had been especially quiet at dinner, when he had seemed distant, preoccupied. Clears throat. For those who have ever doubted someone you love, who have felt the cold seed of suspicion take root despite your efforts to dismiss it, you understand the particular torment Rachel Webb began to experience. She told herself she was being ridiculous. Marcus was a good man, a good father. He had been questioned by police and cleared. He had cooperated fully. He had nothing to hide. But small moments accumulated. Once, she found him in the garage late at night, sitting in his truck with the engine off, just sitting there in the dark. Another time, she woke to hear him talking in his sleep, words she could not quite make out, but that sounded urgent, frightened. She began watching him more carefully. The way he flinched when news reports mentioned missing persons. The way he changed the channel quickly if a crime show came on. The way he gripped the steering wheel too tightly when they drove past the apartment complex where he had worked. In the fall of 2010, Rachel found something that made the seed of doubt bloom into genuine fear. She was cleaning their bedroom, moving furniture to vacuum beneath it, when she found a small notebook that had fallen behind Marcus's nightstand. She picked it up, intending to simply put it back, but it fell open in her hands. The pages contained dates, times, brief notes written in Marcus's handwriting. Most entries were mundane. Oil change due. Tyler dentist apt. Call plumber. But one entry dated January 15, 2008 contained just 3 words: too close, careful. Rachel stared at those words. Read them again. January 15th. The day Jennifer Harris disappeared. Too close, careful. What did it mean? Too close to what? Careful about what? She confronted Marcus that evening, showed him the notebook, asked him directly what the entry meant. He looked at it for a long moment. Then he said he did not remember. It had been over 2 years ago. Maybe he had meant the police investigation. Maybe he had been reminding himself to be careful what he said to investigators. He had been nervous. Anyone would be. The explanation made sense, but it did not feel true. Rachel watched her husband's face as he spoke, saw the tightness around his eyes, the way he swallowed before answering. She had been married to him for 9 years. She knew when he was being honest and when he was choosing his words carefully. This was the latter. Their marriage began to fracture in ways invisible to outsiders but profound to those living within it. They stopped talking about anything meaningful. Conversations became transactional. What time do you need the car? Did you pay the electric bill? Your mother called. They slept on opposite sides of the bed. They made love rarely, mechanically. Rachel felt herself pulling away from Marcus, felt the distance growing, but could not bring herself to close it. In the spring of 2011, their daughter Emma, now 7 years old, began drawing pictures. She had always been artistic, filling notebooks with crayon sketches of flowers, rainbows, their dog. But now her pictures changed. She drew dark figures, shadowy shapes. One drawing showed a car with its door open. Another showed a person lying down, covered by what might have been snow or might have been a blanket. When Rachel asked what the pictures meant, Emma shrugged. She said they were from dreams. Marcus saw the drawings. He said nothing, but Rachel watched him stare at them for long minutes before quietly throwing them away. By the summer of 2012, Rachel knew she could not continue living with the weight of her suspicions. She had no proof, no evidence, just a growing certainty that something terrible had happened, that her husband knew more than he had ever said, that the life they had built together rested on foundations of silence and secrets. She suggested counseling. Marcus refused. She suggested a trial separation. Marcus became angry, the first real anger she had seen from him in years. Why would they separate? What had he done? Nothing. Exactly. He had done nothing wrong. Why was she punishing him? But in his anger, Rachel heard something else. She heard fear. In October 2012, Rachel moved with the children into her mother's house in Wausau, 40 miles south of Merrill. She told Marcus she needed time to think. He did not fight her. He helped load boxes into her car. He hugged the children. He asked her to call when she was ready to talk. She said she would. That night, alone in the house on North Pine Street, Marcus Webb sat at the kitchen table and wept. He knew what was coming. He had always known. The truth cannot stay buried forever. Secrets have weight. Eventually, they crush you. Part 4. The Revelation. On February 7, 2014, Detective Sarah Lindstrom received a phone call that would reopen the Jennifer Harris case. The caller was Rachel Webb. Her voice was shaking. She said she needed to speak with someone about her husband. She said she had information about the missing woman from 2008. She said she could not carry the burden of silence any longer. They met the next day at a coffee shop in Wausau. Rachel was 34 years old now, thinner than she had been, with shadows under her eyes that spoke of sleepless nights. She sat across from Lindstrom and spoke for 40 minutes without stopping. She told Lindstrom about the notebook entry, about Marcus's nightmares and strange behavior, about their son's night terrors and their daughter's disturbing drawings, about the way Marcus had changed after Jennifer's disappearance, becoming distant, secretive, paranoid, about her growing conviction that her husband was hiding something terrible. But Rachel had more than suspicions. She had her son. Tyler Webb was now 13 years old. In January, during a routine therapy session for his anxiety disorder, he had mentioned something to his counselor, something he had seen years ago when he was small, something that had bothered him but that he had not understood. The counselor, bound by confidentiality but concerned about the content, had encouraged Tyler to speak with his mother. He had. Tyler remembered the morning Jennifer Harris disappeared. He had been 7 years old. His father had left for work early before dawn, as he often did in winter. But Tyler, who had been having trouble sleeping even then, had been awake. He had heard his father's truck start. He had gone to the window. He had watched his father load something into the bed of the truck, something long and wrapped in a blue tarp. Tyler had thought it was carpet. Old carpet his father was taking to the dump. But there had been something else. Tyler remembered his father struggling with the weight, remembered him slipping on the ice in the driveway, remembered the tarp shifting, coming partially unwrapped. Tyler had pressed his face against the cold window glass. In the glow of the porch light, he had seen what looked like a hand, pale fingers. He had been 7. He had not understood. He had thought maybe it was a mannequin, a store dummy his father was throwing away. He had gone back to bed. The memory had faded, became dreamlike, uncertain. But as he grew older, as he learned what had happened in his town in January 2008, as he pieced together dates and times and his father's strange behavior afterward, the memory took on new meaning, new horror. He told his mother. She told Detective Lindstrom. Lindstrom listened without interrupting. When Rachel finished, Lindstrom asked careful questions. Could Tyler be certain about the date? Could he describe what he had seen in more detail? How reliable was this memory after 6 years? Rachel had anticipated these questions. She had spoken with Tyler's therapist, who confirmed that while childhood memories are malleable, Tyler's account had remained consistent across multiple sessions. The details had not changed or expanded with repeated telling, which suggested genuine recall rather than confabulation. Tyler himself, now a teenager, understood the gravity of what he was saying. He was frightened but certain. He knew what he had seen. Lindstrom reopened the case officially on February 10, 2014. She obtained a warrant to search the Webb property on North Pine Street. At 6 o'clock on the morning of February 12th, 8 officers arrived at the house. Marcus Webb answered the door in sweatpants and a t-shirt. When shown the warrant, he said nothing. He simply stepped aside. The search lasted 7 hours. Investigators went through every room, every closet, the garage, the attic, the crawl space. They found no body, no physical evidence directly linking Marcus to Jennifer's disappearance. But they found the notebook Rachel had mentioned. They found several blue tarps in the garage, folded neatly on a shelf. They found a detailed calendar from 2008 that Marcus had kept, with the date January 15th circled in red ink and a single word written beside it: mistake. At 2 o'clock that afternoon, Detective Lindstrom sat across from Marcus Webb in the same interview room where she had questioned him 6 years earlier. This time, the atmosphere was different. This time, Marcus knew why he was there. Clear's throat. Lindstrom laid out the evidence methodically. The timeline discrepancies. The cell phone records showing he had been at the apartment complex longer than he had claimed. His son's statement about seeing him load something wrapped in a tarp into his truck on the morning of January 15th. The calendar notation. The notebook entry about being too close and needing to be careful. Marcus listened to all of it. Then he asked for a lawyer. The interview ended. Marcus was not arrested immediately. Without a body, without physical evidence, the case remained circumstantial. But Lindstrom was not finished. She obtained additional warrants. She requested Marcus's bank records from 2008, looking for unusual purchases or activity. She found receipts for rope, heavy-duty garbage bags, and a shovel bought on January 14th, the day before Jennifer disappeared. She tracked Marcus's movements on January 15th using his cell phone data. His phone had pinged off towers in a pattern that took him from the apartment complex south toward the extensive forest preserves that surround Merrill. Specifically, his phone had connected to a tower near Council Grounds State Park for approximately 90 minutes between 7:30 and 9 o'clock that morning. Lindstrom coordinated with the Wisconsin Department of Natural Resources. Search teams with cadaver dogs were deployed to the park. The area covered thousands of acres of dense woods, frozen lakes, and hiking trails. They focused on areas accessible by vehicle, places where someone could drive off the main roads without attracting attention. On March 4th, 2014, 3 weeks after the search began, a cadaver dog alerted near a fallen pine tree approximately half a mile from the nearest parking area. The ground was excavated carefully. 4 feet down, wrapped in a blue tarp and buried beneath layers of frozen earth and decomposing pine needles, investigators found human remains. The body was in an advanced state of decomposition after 6 years, but DNA testing confirmed the identity. Jennifer Lynn Harris. She had been found. The autopsy revealed she had been strangled. Injuries to her neck were consistent with manual compression. Time of passing was impossible to determine precisely, but was consistent with January 2008. Marcus Webb was arrested on March 7, 2014 at his home. He was charged with first-degree intentional ending of life and hiding a body. He did not resist. When read his rights, he said only, "I want to see my children." The arrest made national news. Reporters descended on Merrill. The story had everything: a small-town tragedy, a years-long mystery, a trusted community member revealed as something else entirely. Neighbors expressed shock. Those who knew Marcus could not reconcile the helpful maintenance man, the little league coach, with someone capable of taking a life and hiding the body with such calculation. But others were not surprised. People remembered how Marcus had seemed too calm during the initial investigation, too helpful, too willing to provide details about his movements. Hindsight transforms observation. What had once seemed like cooperation now looked like manipulation. The trial began in November 2014. Prosecutors laid out their case methodically. Marcus Webb had been at the apartment complex on the morning of January 15th. He had seen Jennifer Harris. Something had happened. An argument, an advance rejected, a moment that spiraled out of control. He had taken her life, loaded her body into his truck, and driven to Council Grounds State Park, where he buried her in a location he had likely scouted beforehand given the rope and shovel purchased the day before. He had then gone about his day as if nothing had happened, maintaining his schedule, answering questions from investigators, living with his secret for 6 years until his own son's memory brought the truth forward. The defense argued the evidence was circumstantial. The timeline was based on cell phone data that showed only where Marcus's phone had been, not what he had done. The purchases of rope and a shovel could have innocent explanations. The notebook entry was vague. Tyler's memory of seeing something loaded into a truck was unreliable after so many years. The calendar notation mistake could refer to anything. But on the witness stand, Tyler Webb testified about what he had seen. He was 16 years old now, tall and serious. He spoke clearly without embellishment. He described pressing his face to the window, seeing his father struggle with something heavy, seeing the tarp slip, seeing what looked like a hand. The courtroom was silent as he spoke. Marcus Webb stared at the defense table, unable to look at his son. The jury deliberated for 11 hours. On November 19, 2014, they returned a verdict: guilty on all charges. Marcus Webb was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. As he was led from the courtroom, he turned and looked at Rachel and his children, seated in the gallery. Rachel met his eyes. She did not look away. She had loved this man, had built a life with him, had children with him, had doubted her own instincts and silenced her own fears to preserve that life. No more. In a brief statement after sentencing, Jennifer Harris's mother spoke to reporters. She thanked the investigators who had never given up. She thanked Rachel Webb for her courage in coming forward. She said she could finally begin to grieve properly, knowing where her daughter was, knowing the truth. Her voice broke as she said Jennifer's name. Then she composed herself. She said justice had been delayed but not denied. She said she hoped Jennifer could rest now. The case was closed. Closing. The Jennifer Harris case became a study in how secrets corrode, how silence protects the guilty, how truth emerges sometimes not through brilliant detective work, but through the unbearable weight of conscience breaking open. It showed how those closest to us can hide the darkest actions, how ordinary mornings can contain extraordinary evil, how communities can be shocked by revelations about people they thought they knew. Jennifer Lynn Harris was 26 years old when she disappeared on a morning too cold for anyone to be outside, making her invisible even as she vanished. She deserved better. She deserved the life she had been building, the modest apartment, the reliable job, the Sunday calls to her mother. Instead, she became a cautionary tale, a cold case solved, a name on a memorial. But she was more than that. She was someone's daughter. She was real. And now, finally, she could rest. If this story mattered to you, subscribe and hit the bell. Share the episode. Someone somewhere may still be waiting to be heard.